Last week, we saw that Kevin Hart, the comedian, was basically banned from hosting the Oscars because 10 years ago, he made a joke about how he didn't want his son to be gay, which I have to say, I don't see why that's such a terrible joke. Really, do you want your child to be gay? If your child ends up being gay, maybe it's not a big deal to you, but it seems to me that if you would opt, in the best of all possible worlds, for your child to be straight and, be able to get married to a person of the opposite sex and have natural born children and raise that family in a traditional way, I don't see why that is terrible. Why that's so bad. I know that makes me terrible. I'm not even talking about government crackdowns against gay folks or discriminating against gay folks or anything like that, but I would prefer that my children be straight. I don't see why that should be a controversial statement. In any case, Kevin Hart was ripped up and down for this statement, saying that he wanted his own children to be straight. Oh my God, so terrible. By the way, if everyone did not want their own children to be straight and all of their children, in fact, were not straight, it would be very difficult to create a new generation of humans. But in any case, Kevin Hart now is being targeted even more. He apologized, and then he stepped down from the Oscars. That did not stop Brandy Miller of Huffington Post from suggesting that Kevin Hart needs to go further. She says, apparently, being Kevin Hart means never having to say you're sorry. Just weeks after vehemently defending the controversial Cowboys and Indians-themed birthday party he threw for his 1-year-old son on Thanksgiving Day, no less, the comedian is at the center of yet another controversy that he refused to apologize for. I love this, that now he has to defend the controversial Cowboys and Indians-themed birthday party. Were the Indians all the bad kids? Did the Cowboys run down the Indians and then slaughter them? Or did the party involve them being shepherded into reservations as everybody cheered? If not, then it was probably just cops and robbers or Cowboys and Indians and a group of two kids who were shooting each other with Nerf guns. Oh no, so terrible. But Kevin Hart is a very, very bad man. A very bad man. It says, this week, the homophobic tweets from the early 2000s surfaced, wherein Hart belittles LGBTQ people through uses of words and phrases like the F word, no homo, or using gay as a derogatory term. This homophobia was not reserved to his Twitter account. In his 2010 special, Seriously Funny, in talking about raising his son, Hart said, one of my biggest fears is my son growing up and being gay. Keep in mind, I'm not homophobic. Be happy, do what you want to do. But me as a heterosexual male, if I can prevent my son from being gay, I will. And then she says, the outrage over this is reasonable. Really? Is the outrage over this reasonable? She says, well, people like Kevin Hart are causing LGBTQ kids to commit suicide. How? I mean, there's no evidence he mistreats his own kid. If his kid were gay, there's no evidence he would mistreat his own kid. But again, I would prefer that my kid be Jewish, right? Jewish in practice. I would prefer that my son be straight and marry a woman. I don't know why this preference is such a terrible thing. You have to, I guess, now be completely indifferent as to whether your child is straight or gay. You have to be completely indifferent as to whether your child has to undergo the severe strains that are put upon people by homosexual tendencies or by living in a society that is not as tolerant in certain areas of homosexuality, or by the fact that you're not going to be able to genetically produce the next generation outside of in vitro fertilization or any of the other pressures that come along with being gay. If you hope that your child doesn't have to undergo that, then this makes you a very bad person. Pretty astonishing stuff. And see if that works for the mass majority. I know this is politically incorrect stuff. I know we're supposed to pretend that as parents we are indifferent to how our children come out, that we are indifferent to what sort of sexual lives our children lead. But I have many preferences as to the sort of sexual child that my children lead. Put aside homosexuality, I have many preferences as to whether my child gets married or is living with somebody. I have preferences as to whether my child is promiscuous or only has sex with the person they marry. I have lots of preferences on this because I'm a parent and I'm allowed to have preferences, and that's okay and that's good. And speaking of this, the left has basically decided that it is very bad for parents ever to have preferences about anything surrounding their kids, and so Kevin Hart must be made to apologize. It is deeply important that Kevin Hart apologize for this and then presumably come out and say that he prefers that his kid be gay or that he's completely indifferent as to whether his kid is homosexual or heterosexual. This is truly amazing stuff. As a parent, it is your job to decide which values you hope that your child holds. That's good. That sort of guidance is what children need. As a father of 2 kids under 5, kids need lines. Kids need standards. And hopefully those standards are ones that are productive to society and healthy for your children. A society that prevents parents from inculcating standards in their own children is a society that is going to need a hell of a lot of psychotherapists in the very, very near future. The left has doubled down on their perception that parents should have no standards for their children when it comes to crucial areas of life, like sex. So Kevin Hart is very bad because he says that he wants his child to be straight, which there are any number of good reasons why you would want your child to be straight. Like, plenty of them that have nothing to do with discriminating against gay folks. If you have a preference for a straight lifestyle over a gay lifestyle, that it does not make you a discriminatory bad person. It makes you a person who has a standard of behavior for your children. But we're not allowed to have standards of behavior for our children because that would be you imposing your desires upon your child, and we can't do that. Children must run free. Like Rousseau's Emile, they must run free across the plains, learning from the woodchucks, learning from the bees and the birds and the monkeys and the beavers. They must learn from falling down how to get up. Now, if you're a parent, I know there are a lot of parents in the audience right now who are listening to this going, that's the dumbest crap I ever heard in my life. You know why? Because it is the dumbest crap you ever heard in your life. I have a 2.5-year-old son. You know what he does full-time? His full-time job, like if he could be paid for doing this, he'd be a rich young man. My young son's full-time job is trying to kill himself. This is what he does. Day after day, he finds the most dangerous thing that he can do, and then he does it. He climbs to the top of the couch, and then he tries to jump off the top of the couch. He is all of about 2 feet tall, and he tries to jump from a 3-foot height because he is not a smart human. He's smart for 2.5 years old, meaning he can identify the entire alphabet. But he is not capable of making wise decisions. Yesterday, the nanny came running in because my son was crying. I was trying to get out for work, and he was crying just bloody murder. And I came out and I said, "What happened?" And the nanny said he was trying to plug in the hairdryer. And he's crying and crying, crying. And I looked at him and I said, "If you do that, then you could get burned. There's electricity in there." And he looked at his hand and he said, "Get a boo-boo." And I said, "Right, you'd get a boo-boo." He said, "Fire on my hand." I said, "Right, fire on your hand." And he said, "Fun." Okay, that's what kids are. So this idea that you are not supposed to set limits on your children or guide them through the most perilous parts of life, the areas of gender and sexual identity and orientation. It's so unbelievably stupid, and society has done an incredibly poor job of teaching our kids anything with regard to sexual morality or values or the sort of limits you have to place on your own sexuality in order to be happy. And we all place limits on our sexuality in order to be happy. That's what marriage is. It is a big limit on your sexuality that you place on yourself in order to be happy and to commit and to lead a life that is deeper and more meaningful. And to not want to give that to your child is incredibly stupid.